So I say they're in the middle of a population collapse, not decline, which some could argue, but I would say when you look at how long the monarch butterfly has been on Earth, they say about 1 million years. And around the 1980s is when its decline started to present itself. And they say in 2080 is when these species will be extinct, or at least the Western monarch. So when you look at a species that's been around for 1 million years, and then you take 100-year period where we eliminate the species, I think you could argue that's a collapse. And this is a pollinator species too, which is essential to Earth continuing to spin. Hello and welcome to the Restored Lands podcast. My name is Henry. I will be your host, and today we have a show all about the monarch butterfly, its population decline, why it's happening, how it's happening, what we can do to fix it. We're also going to be talking about some human-caused extinctions, as well as corporate overreach and how it relates to the pollinators and our human health. So first of all, we've got the monarch butterfly. For those of you who do not know, the monarch butterfly is really in the middle of a population collapse, and I really wouldn't even say in the middle of. The monarch butterfly is basically being decimated through legal and illegal logging. Their food source and their shelter is being sprayed with pesticides, herbicides, toxic chemicals. Their foraging grounds are being stripped by urban development, and their abundant resources are heavily challenged by our ever-changing climate. So I say they're in the middle of a population collapse, not decline, which some could argue, but I would say when you look at how long the monarch butterfly has been on Earth, they say about 1 million years. And around the 1980s is when its decline started to present itself. And they say in 2080 is when these species will be extinct, or at least the Western monarch. So when you look at a species that's been around for 1 million years, and then you take 100-year period where we eliminate the species, I think you could argue that's a collapse. And this is a pollinator species too, which is essential to Earth continuing to spin. I've talked a little bit about this. I've even written a little bit about it. But for those of you who still don't really understand how important the pollinators are to our planet and our species, a fun way to learn about it is to watch the Bee Movie. It's a fun animation movie with, I think, Jerry Seinfeld in it. But it's good. It's fun visually. It's educational. It's one of my favorite animation movies for that reason. It's educational and it's fun, and it really gives you a good picture of why pollinators as a whole are so important, even though it's just about bees. And that's another thing, the whole monarch repopulation effort that Restored Lands is trying to do, it's not just about the monarch. Now, while it's greatly about the monarch, the things that we're planting or will be planting are obviously for all the pollinators. So if any of you guys want to read what we've written about this on our blog, we've got 2 articles that you can check out. The first one it's called "Is Fate Sealed for the Monarch Butterfly? Maybe Not, but the Race is On to Save the Species." And then we have another one called three Threatened Pollinator Species That Can Use Our Help: the bumblebee, the monarch butterfly. Well, there's 2 bumblebees in there, but it's the western and the rusty patch. But yeah, check those out. We got some info on there. I'll kind of be going off of that for today's show, but we might as well hop right into who and what the monarch butterfly is. So the monarch butterfly has an eastern and a western species, and it's differentiated by their migration patterns. So the eastern species, they're obviously going to be in the east as far north as southern Canada, along the Gulf Coast down into Mexico, and then the western species is going to be kind of on the other side of the Rockies, as well as in the plains area. But you've got the 2 species. Western species is down 95% from 1980, whereas the eastern species, I want to say, is around 80%. Still pretty bad. the two different things that are plaguing these two species, for one, is logging, legal and illegal. So in Mexico is a massive overwintering site for the eastern monarch, and there has been legal and illegal logging operations going on there for quite some time that is destroying the fur that the monarch butterfly overwinters in. There's also a parasite there called the, bear with me, Ophrocytis electrosarca. We're just going to call it the OE. So what this does is it weakens their wings, so obviously it's going to affect their survival, and it infects the monarch, especially at these overwintering sites. So they've got a parasite they've got to deal with. They've got to deal with illegal logging and legal logging. So while there are protections in place, they still have this issue. And there's, plenty of this going on illegal land. So that's pretty unfortunate. And yeah, I think it really takes all of us to come together, as far as the countries, Canada, United States, and Mexico, to come together and try to put a stop to this on that front. Another thing is urban development, which is a factor that affects the western population that overwinters in California. So we've talked a little bit about that as well, Restored Lands has, and urban development is a big thing that is, you could say, plaguing our pollinators, our natural resources, our environment altogether as a whole. And something that doesn't really get all too talked about, I think, or at least I've really never heard, is the fact that around 2 million acres per year is what is lost due to urban development. And that's quite substantial. A lot of people don't talk about that. And that's just the United States alone. That's not globally. So along with the urban development, we've got farmlands that are also spraying toxic chemicals on the crops, which are killing them and really wreaking havoc. So that leads me into the whole pesticide part of this issue and how it kind of leaks into corporate overreach, or at least in this specific case. So some of you guys know of Monsanto, some of you guys know of Bayer, however they're pronounced, pretty big companies. But really quick, I want to read this short excerpt for you from nrdc.org. And this here is actually linked in our first article, Is Fate Sealed for the Monarch Butterfly? It's the second link. And it talks about, well, let me read it to you. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but let's just read a little bit of it. Milkweed used to be found scattered throughout the agricultural Midwest in native prairies, as well as corn and soy fields, with monarchs actually often laying more eggs on milkweeds in farm fields. However, in the late 90s, agribusiness companies like Monsanto, I pronounced that wrong the first time, began genetically engineering crops to withstand the application of glyphosate, an herbicide that Monsanto also produced. The herbicide-tolerant genes allowed farmers to spray glyphosate in their fields without harming their crops. So the result, glyphosate use skyrocketed, which pretty much eliminated milkweed from agricultural fields and honestly really started to poison them. And it says, let's see, that was in the 90s. So yeah, around the 80s is when the decline really started. So with the loss of milkweed, the monarch population began a steep decline, dropping over 80% in 20 years. And it's also saying here that you really shouldn't be planting this milkweed next to these contaminated fields because it's going to contaminate the plants. So that just goes to show how toxic they are. And they even mention neonics, which is a class of insecticides that threaten bees and other pollinators. So that is really what has become of these fields. They're just contaminated swaths of land. So over the time, glyphosate started to lose, or am I saying that wrong? Glyphosate began to lose its effectiveness. So what they started to do was they just started to continually genetically modify herbicides. And what they actually came up with, it says here, which is the combination of glyphosate and 2,4-D, leading to even more toxic chemicals being applied to our farmland. And I think it's worth saying that Monsanto also sells and profits off medication. So you can argue that while they have their toes dipped in toxic soil and in healing pharmaceuticals, they could be a part of a problem that is perpetuating a system that is making people and our land unhealthy and sick. Now, that's a pretty hefty allegation, but I can tell you I'm certainly not alone in feeling that way. I mean, when you look at a company that's poisoning the land and selling drugs, I don't know, that just doesn't add up, man. And they're making profit off of it. It just doesn't add up. So I wanted to make a point of saying that. Now, in 2018, Bayer acquired Monsanto for $66 billion, with a B, $66 billion. Now, they dropped their name, but they continued their work. And I want to mention a quote, but really quick, the guy who said it, I believe it was the guy who said it, originally said, like, when they sold Bayer, or when they bought Monsanto, I mean, Bayer had to get rid of their seed and trait division or something like that. So he's super stoked that they were a part of Monsanto. But anyways, this is what he says. And I just think it's really interesting that he says this. He goes, quote, "We don't have overlapping business," said Condon. "Our combination is highly complementary, more so than we thought in the beginning. Now we're going to look at how we can be more efficient with our customers," end quote. And this was said by Liam Cordon, a member of the board of management from Bayer AG and president of the crop science division at the time of writing this article, headquartered in Germany. Now, what do they mean by that? Now we're going to look at how we can be more efficient with our customers. So you're poisoning the land, you're selling us drugs, and you want to be more efficient with us. I don't know. I'm just curious what that means. That's all I'm saying. Now, in 2020, Bayer settled a majority. So it says online, they settled a majority of current and possible future lawsuits for more than 10. When I actually read, it was like 9.6 billion, but this has more than 10 billion. You can't really trust any exact number, but multi-billion-dollar settlement. And this was per a CNN report. And you could say this kind of affirms their admission of fault and guilt. However, they did specifically say this is not an admission of fault and guilt, but it kind of does when you're paying billions of dollars to people who, with what was it, the Hodgkin's disease, lymphoma. Those were the people that started to sue, and I believe it was the EPA came out in 2015 saying there's, glyphosate could be causing the big C. So yeah, you could say that admits some kind of guilt. Now, 1 year later in May 2021, I don't know if I said this was in June of 2020 when they settled for the $10 billion. Now, the following year, not even a full year later, in May 2021, in San Francisco, a federal judge rejected a $2 billion plan to settle future claims. And now thousands of cancer claims remain unsolved. Interesting, So what that showed me was, at the end of the day, it seems like corporations, they're able to get away with it. They're able to get off the hook. They might have to pay some kind of reprimandation or something like that, but they can afford it, for one, and two, they get off the hook, and three, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. I mean, that's a part of getting off the hook, but it just doesn't matter. It falls away. People forget about it, and it's too bad because they're allowed to continue this type of rule, and I think it's quite the overreach. Again, I'll say it. You have your feet dipped in toxic soil and healing pharmaceuticals. That's a massive red flag, and I hope that everybody else can see that and look into that and understand that and start to put pieces together, because I'm certainly not going to say it, but I think you're smart enough to figure out what's going on here. Another glyphosate thing I want to touch on real quick was in September 24, a .gov website published an article. It was from the NIH. It was titled "Overview of Human Health Effects Related to Glyphosate Exposure." And in section 4.2, it's titled "Glyphosate Exposure, a Possible Cause of Gut Disease and Microbiotic Disruption." So basically what this is saying is the article suggests that glyphosate may cause oxidative stress, neurotoxic effects, and potential links to diseases like non-Hodgkin lymphoma. It also emphasizes the need for more research to protect the public's health. So, I mean, the government's even saying, is even admitting, we don't know, like, we should probably research this more. To me, it sounds like they know there's something wrong with it. And it's like, they want to go through the hoops to document it properly, to say, okay, no, this is a big C causer, this is bad. They want to do that. Like, I don't know if they actually want to do that, but it seems like they're trying to put on the illusion that's what they're trying to do. So it's just interesting to see the government say that and allow this corporation to continue this, and also to block that 2021 $2 billion plan for future settlements. It's all worth bringing attention to, because it's all connected. It's all connected. Whether you want to believe that or not, it is truly all connected. So with that, the government putting out this article with the corporation, settling, blah, blah, blah. I found this quote online that was said by Bayer. It didn't give a person's name, but it says, despite all this, quote, leading health regulators around the world have repeatedly concluded that Bayer's glyphosate-based herbicides can be used safely as directed, and that glyphosate is not a carcinogenic, including more than 100 studies the EPA considered relevant to its Big C risk analysis, and more than 800 safety studies overall submitted to regulators, Bayer said. So, end quote. So, another thing is worth noting, really worth noting, critics were questioning Monsanto. I keep calling Monsanto. I'm sorry. You get who I'm talking about. Monsanto. Critics were questioning the relationship between the corporation and the EPA, because in 2017, a CNN investigation showed internal emails from Monsanto discussing communications with an EPA official. It said in 2015, a 2015 email, a Monsanto executive wrote that EPA official at the time offered to help stop another agency's review of glyphosate. And he said, or he or she, I don't know who it was, they said, quote, if I can kill this, I should get a medal, end quote. So that right there is showing the corporations in bed with agencies that are set out to protect the environment. It even says the Monsanto spokeswoman responded at the time that the company has never paid, given gifts to, or done anything else to curry favor with the EPA. So, I mean, of course they're going to say that, and I'm not saying that, I'm not saying they did any one thing or the other. I'm simply presenting evidence that is pretty compelling on behaviors that are major red flags, not just for our environment, but for ourselves. I mean, we all are one, right? So if we're one with the environment and they want to harm the environment, clearly they're fine with harming us, and we see how they harm the soil and have pharmaceutical drugs. Like I said, it's all tied together, and I'm not saying any one thing or the other, but I'm trying to put this information in one place for people so that they can make their own decision on what's going on here, because it's a head scratcher. Well, it's not really a head scratcher. If you want it to be, it could be a head scratcher, and that's really the thing. Like, do you want to keep your heads in the sand, or do you want to try to at least have another perspective on what's happening? Because there are many perspectives that can be had. So try to open up your mind to perspectives that are valid, and don't waste your time with the perspectives that are not. So climate change. That is a big thing that is harming the monarch butterfly and many other pollinators. So you have to think, when the sun comes out and the winter ends or spring comes and the temperatures get warm, flowers want to bloom and everything wants to come back to life. But when it starts to do that, and then we have more cold snaps and extreme weather, it kills those off, and it stresses the resources. It stresses the life also for these pollinators. Because, they can't live out in freezing temperatures. Like, they're out when the sun's out. They're out when it's warm out. They're out when the temperature's nice. They're not out when it's snowing, right? So climate change plays a big role in that, and we can get into how climate change is man-made. At some point we certainly will, but I'll just quickly say about climate change. When we look at something like the extinction of the monarch and how quick it happens, it's concerning, and I think for me it goes to show just how unnatural we're trying to survive in this world. Because, I don't know, I personally, I don't think the environment goes awry this quickly. I mean, it certainly has pretty much everything to do with us, and them trying, the people, whoever trying to say, like, No, this is natural. This is the earth is warming. No, it's us. We're doing it. That's all I'm going to say about that. So I attended a virtual meeting back. I actually think it was in November. But anyways, I attended a virtual meeting that the US FWS put on, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service put on. And this was gathering people that are concerned about the monarch butterfly. These are gathering the people that have something to say about it, or they just want to hear what people have to say about it. And that was what was cool about it. So the beginning, there was, the federal government workers, they came on, they talked about some stuff. And then the second part of it was where they let the public come on and have comment, or it was really comment, it wasn't really questions because nobody would answer you back. So you went on, you had X amount of time to say something, and I'll just say it was a very inefficient way of doing things. Now it's the federal government, so I'm not surprised it was completely inefficient. That's actually why I didn't stay for the whole thing. It was just like they would have someone come on, and because a lot of people would sign up to say something, and it seemed like 90% of the people didn't show up or they didn't say anything. So I'd go through the list of names of asking people to talk, and once in a blue moon you'd get somebody. So luckily I was able to hear a few people talk, and that's actually what I want to talk about really quick. And I want to say how it was neat seeing how different people had different opinions on the matter. But the opinion that really stuck out to me was this man came on and he said that he had spoken to a number of different monarch butterfly organizations, pollinator organizations, and I'm not going to name them, but he said that a number of them, in fact, he might have said all of them, but he said a lot of them were for conservation over regulation. So that basically means letting the people take this problem in their hands and not pass it on to the federal government, classifying this as a threatened species and so on and so forth. So he had that viewpoint, and another guy had the viewpoint. Let me pull it up on the article. So another guy, he came on and he said something pretty interesting, which I was not expecting to hear. But he says that it's a possibility that the United States Fish and Wildlife Service is possibly taking up this opportunity to save the monarch or put them on the threatened list and designate critical habitat for them as a stunt, as a public stunt to look good. That's what this person says. I'm not saying that. I'm simply putting out statements that have been made by the public on this matter. So it was neat, and unfortunately it was just such an ineffective way of having a virtual meeting. I was like I heard a couple more actually, and one lady, I'll say I didn't put this in the article, but one lady said something to the effect of, which I say a lot of, we need to have a connection to this. We need to have a connection to what's going on. Connection is the key word. Not just understanding, because that's a part of it, but a connection is the second part of it, which brings it together and I think allows for better action when we understand and connect. So that was kind of the politics of it. That's how I titled it on the article, if you guys would like to read it. And I'll say, some of you might know this, but I am personally for conservation over regulation. And I'm going to tell you why I'm for conservation over regulation with this particular situation. I think that this is an opportunity for us, we the people, to understand and connect with what is actually going on here, and not just save this species, but understand what this means as a bigger picture. Because in 200 years, 300 years, 1,000 years, like if we don't get a handle on this type of issue, where the people just don't care about our pollinators and our species that are imperative to our world, and we just hand it off to some entity like the federal government, which is a questionable entity as it is. I'm not throwing any shade at any of the outdoor organizations with the federal government. I'm just saying the federal government is questionable, and I think we all know that. I think this is a chance for us, the people, to understand and connect with what's going on so that we can prevent this in the future. And I think there are plenty of ways that the federal government can help this. I don't think that we need to pass it off to them to let them take care of it. I think they can help with funding. They can fund organizations and programs that are trying to repopulate and restore this butterfly. I think they can help with education. I mean, they have They have visitor centers all over the country and state parks and national parks. So, well, and I know these are federal and governmental agencies. They're not all one, which I guess you could say they kind of are, but they're not. So what I'm getting at is they have the infrastructure, they have the resources where they can immediately put out programs for education, where they can fund things. Now, I don't know where the government stands with their funding and all that, but I'm saying they could at least help with education, and education is a big part of it, because through education comes an understanding and connection. At least you could only hope, and that's going to make the difference. So like I said, this is a chance for us to evolve. Another really cool little fact is the monarch butterfly. It's a symbol for transformation. It's also a symbol for strength and adversity and resilience. Some say it's a connection between living and dead, and even hope and renewal. It's even said to be a symbol for advocates of biological diversity and human rights at the U.S.-Mexican border. And another fun fact, the ski hill where I live is called Monarch Ski Hill. Now, the USFWS is calling on the people to help. They have officially called on the people to help. And that means us doing our part in trying to repopulate the monarch. So planting milkweed if we have the property, educating our friends, advocating to our community. It's kind of now, they're kind of saying, look guys, it's in your hands, for now at least, if you guys want to do something about it. And as I said, it's probably going to take the designation threatened under the Endangered Species Act. It's still an opportunity, as for now, for us to do something about this. And just really quick, I'm going to say, as some of you guys know, we tried doing this on public land. I reached out to BLM, I reached out to Forest Service, and they said that their permits were taken for the next 2 years. So it's 2025. So in 2027, possibly we'd be able to do it. And they didn't even like really promote us doing that. So I said, whatever, we'll just do this on private land. And I think it's going to work out better that way. But I just wanted to quickly say, they sent me the list of permits that were taking up space on that list. And those were why we couldn't do our project. Some of the things on the list were like just disappointing. It's like, really guys, you're putting in a driveway for some private, for some private homeowner's property. And you're doing a handful of those with some other things too. And some other things were great. It's not like it was all negative, but there were just some things in there. I was like, really, these things are taking up the permits where we can't do this? Like, I thought you guys were calling on the people to help and we're trying to do it. So that was that with that. Now, as far as how you guys can help with restoring the monarch population, there's a number of things you guys can do. You can advocate, you can educate your friends, you can take part in creating a habitat, which is really the big thing. And if you have the opportunity, such as the space and the land to do it, I recommend doing that. And big thing I recommend is make sure you stick with native plants. There's a number of reasons why you want to do that. Like, for example, tropical milkweed. If you were to put that out, it can cause the monarch to breed at the wrong time. It can disrupt the ecosystem. That's just one example. So it's just best to stick with native plants if you guys can do that. I really support that. So you got milkweed, you've got nectar flowers. There's a ton of different things you guys can use. But a big part of this effort is you guys need to go out and do your own research online, which is quick and easy, on how to properly do that. Because I don't know where you guys are located. You might be located in Maine. You guys might be located in Washington. You might be located anywhere, right? So you'll really have to figure out what's going to be best for your habitat. Another quick thing is just make sure you guys have a viable place to do it. Make sure you have good soil, well aerated soil. When you plant the milkweed, I kind of like clusters. When you plant these things, you don't want to plant them like right on top of each other. You want to plant them with some space, but you kind of want them to be clustered together so that the monarch has place to have shelter. I mean, the milkweed is where the monarch breeds. It's where the caterpillar eats. Like, it's the exclusive food to the monarch caterpillar. There is no other food that the monarch caterpillar eats, and the milkweed is also responsible for creating that toxin in the monarch butterfly, which renders it poisonous for predators. So it kind of keeps it safe. So the milkweed is critical, 100% critical to the survival of the monarch butterfly. Milkweed is critical. Another thing you guys can do to have a greater effect on not just this pollinator species, but also, well, our environment is try not to use pesticides and herbicides. Try a natural approach. There's many different ways you can do farming and gardening naturally. So give that a look. We've even written an article on it. It's pretty long, but it's called, it talks about living soil, composting, some good methods to learn and know when it comes to working with the soil. We've got some great links in there too. It's a really, really great resource to learn from. So check that one out. I think it's like one of the first few articles that we put out. So yeah, another thing, make sure you guys have sunshine. Make sure it's not crazy windy like a wind tunnel. We got a lot of monarch. We got a lot of milkweed planted here in Salida, which is great. I think this initiative has been started before, possibly just from what I've seen. But I'll say from what I've seen, it's in some windy areas. That's not super conducive for the monarch butterfly. So just remember that. Sunny, not too windy. You want to have some wind, of course. So yeah, other than that, check out our articles. You can get some good resources and good information there, but definitely make sure you do your own research. All right, so we are now at the segment of the episode where we're going to start talking about some human-caused extinctions. Now we're going to talk about some amphibians, some fish, some reptiles. We're going to talk about a number of things that have been subject to human impact. So the first one we're going to talk about is the golden toad. This was in 2019. It was extinct. It was native to Costa Rica, and it was said to go extinct from human-induced climate change. So their reproduction relied heavily on the water, and with lots of water or little water, it really implicated their ability to reproduce, and unfortunately, they died off. Now, another thing with amphibians in particular that causes their extinction is fungus. There's a fungus called chytrid fungus. More specifically, I'm going to try this. Batrotritrum dendrobitis. That's nowhere close to it. We're just going to call it BD for short. So this here infects and damages the skin. It spreads globally through human activities, through things like the commercial trade, like for food and pets. It gets spread through that. It can also get spread through infected soil or water, so things like boots or clothing and equipment. That's why, like, if you're somewhere like, say in Alaska, for example, I used to vacation there a lot, and we'd do a lot of fishing, and there'd always be signs and rules and laws that you couldn't wear felt bottoms. And I think I was young at the time, so I don't really remember exactly what it was for, but I think it was for some aquatic algae or something. And also here in Colorado, like, you take your boat out any of these state parks, because a lot of our state parks are reservoirs. But when you take your boat out, you'll see signs that say you need to clean off the debris, weeds, anything, whatever that's left on your boat so you don't transport it. It's actually a pretty big thing. I think they even have people that like make sure you do that when you pull your boat out. I don't spend too much time on the reservoirs out here in Colorado, so I can't tell you for sure, but they keep a lid on that. So this BD is actually responsible for the decline of over 500 amphibian species. So it's a major issue. I mean, you could say it's a major issue. Everything's perspective. I would say it's a major issue. Another one was the mountain mist frog from Australia. This was declared extinct in 2021. The Cherokee harlequin frog, 2019 that was. Pass stubfoot toad in 2019. And the splendid poison frog, they're saying that's likely from the fungus. Now, the splendid poison frog and the pass stubfoot toad, those two were victims of the illegal pet trade. And unfortunately for the splendid toad frog, this one was last seen in 1992. But a point I want to draw attention to is the fact that it was designated in 2018 extinct. And we'll touch on that in a few minutes. But yeah, I want to draw attention to the gap in designation. So anyways, yeah, these two were subjects of the illegal pet trade. Now, the illegal pet trade is a pretty big industry, if you will. It's an industry estimated at $7 to $10 billion yearly. Some even say upwards of $20 billion a year. And it's the fourth largest globally traded item after drugs, people, and counterfeit products. Now, counterfeit products is a pretty broad term, but still the fourth thing. That's pretty big. And a lot of people buy these exotic pets for many reasons. Some of them buy them for personal enjoyment or status. It's a big thing, status. A lot of people want to breed them and resell them. Some people are hobbyists and they want to obtain these animals and have them as a pet, I suppose. Another thing is food, medicine, clothing, and fashion. Now, one not so fun fact I wanted to share with you guys is the most illegally traded animal is the pangolin. I believe I'm saying that right. It's a scaly reptile, and yeah, it's said to account for 20% of the illegal pet trade. And that's used for medicine, food, and clothing. In fact, I think it was one of the King Louis or something he had a whole thing, a whole vest, like full of scales. It's kind of weird, actually. I'll see if I can post it. But so yeah, that's the illegal pet trade. Unfortunate thing that goes on here on Earth, but there are quite a number of unfortunate things that go on this planet as well that need our attention. So, and that's just one of them. So another thing that contributes to the amphibians' decline is human recklessness. So things like mining and logging, introduction of invasive species. So some victims of this human recklessness, we've got the 2021 extinction of the sharp-snouted day frog, the 2017 extinction of the Christmas Island whiptail skink, the 2019 extinction of the Jalpa Falls brook salamander, which was last seen in 1976 and again was designated in 2019. So now I'm going to make this point. I've noticed that a lot of these species they go extinct, but they're not actually put on the list for many years later. Okay. So with that said, I want to explore what that means for the monarch butterfly. Now they're telling us by the year 2080, the monarch butterfly will go extinct. That's what they're telling us, by 2080. So if they're saying by 2080, there will be no more monarch butterfly, does that mean there's going to be a 10 to 15 year gap in between the monarch butterfly no longer existing and being listed as extinct? So does that mean like maybe by 2060 will be the last time we see monarch butterfly? And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying from what I've seen, the pattern I've seen shows that it's a possibility that the year they're giving us with the monarch butterfly's extinction may be when they designate it, but it may not be when it's actually gone. So it's something to consider. Another big one, some of you guys might remember this. I know I do. Back in 2015, this was a while ago now, about 10 years ago. 2015, some of you guys will remember there was a giant tortoise that went extinct. So this was a Pinta Island giant tortoise. It's called a Pinta giant tortoise. And the Pinta Islands are in the Galapagos, which is just south of Costa Rica and Panama and east of Ecuador, out in the ocean. And this giant tortoise was kind of a combination between human activity and introduced species. So I think it was the 19th and 20th century, whalers and fishermen hunted the tortoises for food. And then later on, they introduced goats and rats, which impacted the vegetation on the island and impacted food supply. And it was saying that the rats were preying on the young. So those of you that have not seen one of these tortoises, they look like a proper dinosaur. This thing is 5 feet tall, and it looks like, I forget the name of the dinosaur. It looks like that big, tall dinosaur that would eat the tops of the trees. It's huge. It's wild looking. So it's super rad. And it goes to show how huge animals used to be in our world. Now, this tortoise was in captivity for, 40 years. They took it over in 1972, was in human captivity for quite a while. They tried breeding them. They tried to keep the species going. Unfortunately, it just didn't happen. So in 2012, this Pinta Island tortoise was extinct. Now, it wasn't declared extinct until 2015. So there again is the pattern that I'm trying to draw attention to, and I'm a little concerned with. Maybe some of you guys understand more of that pattern. And from what I looked into, like you kind of need to go through like protocols, or you need to go through some things before you don't just list it like that. But I'll say there are some that way too many years have gone by. And this information, in case you're wondering and want to see, it's on the ifaw.org website. It's on the recently extinct list. Now for fish, we've got the Chinese paddlefish, which was extinct in 2019. And again, guys, these are all recent extinctions. An extinction is a pretty massive event, pretty serious. That means it's gone. Now, you do have like the dire wolf and things coming back, which is strange. I don't even understand what's going on in this world anymore. But we do have, back to what we're saying, we do have the Chinese paddlefish in 2019 that was extinct from overfishing and dam construction. And I just want to make an interesting comment on the whole dam thing. Like, personally, I think dams are pretty boring. I'm not all that interested in them. But I've done a lot of traveling, and I've seen a lot of dams, and there's a handful of them in particular where I remember seeing just how intrigued people are on the dams. You know, they're just so, and like, don't get me wrong, it's a impressive feat of human engineering. But yeah, it's just interesting how you have people who are like super stoked about them, and you have people who are like totally against them. I just wanted to draw attention to the polarity. I don't know why. And then another one we've got is the Tecopa. I believe I'm saying that right. The Tecopa pupfish. This is out in the middle of nowhere. So the Tecopa Hot Springs, maybe some of you guys have heard of it. I have, not because I've been there, but just because I spent a ton of time on Google Maps. It's out near Inyo, California, out in the desert there. And in 1970 is when this fish was declared extinct. But it was around the 50s and 60s when it started to have a problem. So what was interesting was this was around a hot spring, and it began to gain popularity in the 50s and 60s. And with that popularity came infrastructure. It came construction of bathhouses and diversions of water flows. And that is ultimately what did end this pupfish. So the diversion of water flow raised temperatures, and it increased the current speeds. And that is made its environment, made the pupfish environment not favorable for it, and that's what killed it. That was around 1965, so 5-year gap in between their designation. So some not so fun facts is that it said 90% of all species to ever exist on planet Earth have gone extinct. Now, I don't know how much that really says about our current civilization. I should probably learn more about the history of it. But when 98% of all species have ever gone extinct, like, we're not a very old civilization. I think that goes to show not just how many animals have been on this earth, but how many different time periods this earth has gone through and seen. When I say time periods, I mean, yeah, like back during the dinosaur age, this planet was a tropical place. These mountains I live in, this was a tropical paradise, which is interesting to think about. So, yeah. Neat. But what's not so neat is in the last 175 years, greenhouse gases have increased 10 times, and half the world's habitable land has been turned into agriculture, which we still don't know how to farm sustainably. And we've got a whole article on that, again, which you want to peek at. It's a good one to learn about healthy soil, and that is what's at the crux of it. We need healthy soil. It's not about what we spray on our plants. In fact, it's not at all about what we spray on our plants. We shouldn't be spraying things on our plants. We shouldn't have to spray things on our plants, because if we have healthy soil, that eliminates the need for that. Everything that the plant and crop needs is in the soil, living in the soil. That's why it's called living soil, and it gives your crop, your plant, your field what it needs. So yeah, that's not cool. And then since the last ice age, which it's been 10,000 years since then, we've eliminated 1/3 of all forest. And again, remember, urban development accounts for 2 million acres per year taken. So that's natural resources, that's space for our pollinators, that's space for all kind of wildlife and natural resources. So think about that. 2 million acres per year in the United States alone. That's pretty hefty. So what does this tell us, and how do we move forward from this? Well, I could say off the cuff what it tells me is our level of awareness is nowhere near where it needs to be. And I think where we go from there is, look, there are going to be people who just don't care. And those are going to be the people that that are tougher to sway or show the light, if you will. But I think there are plenty of people who don't fall in that boat. And I think for those people, if we can find a way to show them a better way through education and understanding and connection, as I like to say, that will be the difference. We need to work on that. And how we do that, I think there's many different ways that we can do that. But first and foremost, we can't be afraid to speak up. We can't be afraid to talk, and we can't be afraid to be advocates. So if there's something that you want to see changed, I like to say, be the change you like to see. And if that's not enough, hey, maybe it won't be, but maybe it will be, and we could at least try. So I think that's where we go from here. We can't just give up. We can't give our power to the federal government and say, hey, you take care of it. This is an opportunity for us, as far as the monarch repopulation is concerned, to understand and connect with the problem that we face on planet Earth in terms of our sustainability and how we allow the ones that keep our Earth spinning to stay in the picture, and how that's going to change. I don't know how that's going to change. I mean, we see a lot with, meat grown in labs. We see, the baby formula, synthetic baby, like, it's scary. But I think with the right knowledge and awareness, some of us can overcome it. Maybe not everybody. That might be a bit of a stretch. And maybe we're not here for everybody to learn of what's truly going on. Maybe those people are here to take part in this craziness. Whatever it is, I don't know. But if you're interested in unifying with our natural world, I think that Restored Lands nonprofit might have a place for you as a supporter, as an advocator, even as a team member. So with that said, guys, I think we're gonna wrap this up here. If you guys like this video, if you guys like the podcast, please like it, share it, subscribe, follow us on our Instagram. We've got Instagram, Facebook, X. We don't really use Facebook. We've got YouTube and Spotify. We'll at some point be on Apple Podcasts. But yeah, if you like us, if you support us, go to our website, check us out, consider donating, consider getting involved. There's a number of things you guys can do to get involved. And yeah, I think what we've got going on here at this organization is great for everybody. I think it's great for the future. And if we can get enough people on board with what we're doing here, I think that we can be a real force in, well, the future, and how we, the people, decide to shape it, at least environmentally, and in a health conscious way. Because I've said it before, we're more than just healthy land. We are about nature. We are nature. So we are about all of it. So check us out. But with that, guys, I think we're going to end it here. Thank you guys for listening to the Restored Lands podcast. My name is Henry Passerini. I've been your host, and I will look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys.